Hi everyone, Bear from Bear Reads Books. Welcome back to my channel. Time for a book review, but I want to talk about a particular author today and a couple of books from that author. And that author is Ben Lerner, and I've got two of his books right here. The most recent one being the Topeka School, and this is the one prior to that called 1004. And the one prior to that, his very first one, was called Leaving the Atocha Station. Now, I haven't read this, so I'm not going to talk about this. So I'm going to put this aside. This is still on my list. And the reason why I read his first book, or his first novel, and his third novel, and skipped the second, is because the first novel, the first novel, Leaving the Atocha Station, and this novel share a main character. They're not linear in any way, but they fill out the main story of this character called Adam. And I really enjoyed Leaving the Atocha Station when I read it 18 months ago, I guess. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was just such a great book. It was intelligent and sometimes difficult to grasp what was going on because of the prose and how complex it was. But Ben Lerner writes so beautifully. And some of these criticisms I know that you will share with me, because I heard a lot of these criticisms when the Topeka School ended up in the BookTube Prize last year and got knocked out really early, considering it was up for a Pulitzer, I think, last year. It got knocked out of BookTube really early, and I think that's because of this complexity. So Ben Lerner is at heart, I think, even though he's written 3 novels now, I think at heart he is a poet. And he's also one of those people you would maybe class as tortured artists. Every time you see an interview with him, he just seems to be this poor tortured soul. Writing has just beaten him senseless. But he talks about what he hates about poetry, and he talks about poetry, and he's written lots of essays about the art of poetry. And what comes across in a lot of those essays is it's very much a love-hate relationship. Yes, he's great at it, and he loves writing it, but he also hates it for its complexity and what it does to his mind, I guess, and what it does to his emotional state. So you understand that after writing and doing poetry, or being part of the poetry community for a long time, that he decided to jump into novels, and the first one being Leaving the Atocha Station. And at its heart, it's a standard novel. It's linear. It tells a story from beginning, middle, and end. It has a set of a main character and a revolving door of support characters. So in that way, it's a very standard novel. But this, the Topeka School, is a huge removal from the standard novel, but I'll get to that in a minute. First, let's talk about Leaving the Atocha Station. Let me put that down and have a drink of coffee. The reason for the coffee, it's late in the afternoon, the reason for I've just finished work and I just felt like I've been talking and answering people's stupid questions all day at work today. So be careful what you comment down below, because it could be the thing that makes me snap today. I'm drinking coffee at 5 in the afternoon. So, Leaving the Atocha Station tells the story of Adam, who is a gifted poet, and he's on a scholarship bursary type deal where he's been given a chance to write a dissertation and a collection of poetry while in Madrid in Spain. So the story revolves around him living and working in Spain and being involved in this arts community and community of poets and authors. And as part of this program that he's in, which is seemingly quite auspicious and quite a big deal, he gets a small stipend, a small amount of money, just for his living expenses. And he also has certain responsibilities with regards to speaking at engagements and going to dinner parties and just being an active part of this community. And he's expected to write something about the poetry of Spain, but he has, at his core, he has this complete fear of not being good enough, this of imposter syndrome, if I think you would call it. He thinks that he is an awful poet and everything that he writes is just abominable rubbish. And on top of that, he refuses to believe that he understands or can speak a word of Spanish. But he obviously speaks enough to get by and to communicate a little, because he ends up with a few different girlfriends. He gets himself in and out of a multitude of small and large adventures and gets himself in and out of trouble. But at his core, he's desperately afraid. And part of that is his wanderings around Madrid, and everything he does in Madrid involves him taking an exorbitant amount of tranquilizers and pills. And he lists them, the different types of pills he's taking for different moods and different times of day. And on top of that, he smokes an incredible amount of weed, and it's seemingly constant. And all of that is to, one, keep his creative juices flowing, which he feels he needs to, but also to just get him through the day, because he seems like he's so fearful of his own gift and his own art, but also so fearful of being in a strange place and not knowing anyone and not knowing the language. So the entire book revolves around his wanderings around Madrid. And there's lots of books like this. You Mrs. Dalloway walking around London. You've got James Joyce with all of his books seemingly just a person wandering around all over the place. So there's lots of these types of journey in one place type of books, and these are quite common things. And Ben Lerner's done an excellent job at doing this journey in a single place kind of book. You really get a feel for his experience of Madrid, and having been to Madrid in the last 2 years, just before COVID, it was it's an amazing city. And every time he mentions places like all the different art museums and train stations and even just shopping centres and buildings, I remembered those places, but you really get a feel for what Madrid is like. And when he travels away with girlfriends and friends to other places for sightseeing weekends, you really get a feel for what Spain is like and the people. But again, you also get a feeling for how broken or how incredibly scared of everything this young man Adam is. I'm guessing in this book he's maybe a graduate student age, so he's maybe early to mid-20s, so he's done his bachelor's, he's done his degree, he's now a graduate student, and he's been offered this sort of scholarship. So he's not intended to study, but he is intended to work. The title Leaving the Atocha station, refers to a terrorist bombing that happened in Madrid at the time that he was here. So this is late 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember the exact date, I'm sorry. But it's a real event. So he places his visit or his time in Madrid to this real event, being the bombing of the Atocha station in Madrid. And his place in that, when everyone throngs to the streets and there's thousands of people all over the streets trying to help people or trying to get out of the way or trying to get in to find friends and family, is his place in that is really just wandering around. Like the rest of the book, he kind of ambles from place to place, kind of getting into these mini adventures, but really letting the world rush over him rather than diving in. So as I said, he has this huge fear of not being good enough, of being an imposter, but everyone seems to think he is some sort of gifted, artistic, poetic genius, and everything he writes is amazing. I mean, his girlfriend gets hold of his notebook that he's been scribbling nonsense in, as he would describe it, and she's blown away by the art that Adam has created. And so he has this real problem understanding how good he actually is. And I think we all go through these things, either when we change jobs or careers or in new relationships. We always think we're not good enough. None of us are ever confident enough to think that we're always going to be okay, that we're always going to succeed. And if you are, best of luck to you. But every time you try something new, there's always this fear that you're just not good enough. And Adam is stuck in this thing, and the whole book is punctuated by that. So now, that was the first book, and I loved it. It was great, and it flowed, and it was really good. The Topeka School does not do any of those things. It doesn't flow. It's not linear. It's still just Adam and a bunch of other characters, but they're in such a jumble that it's really hard sometimes to work out which character perspective we're seeing at the moment, or who is the he referred to, or who is the she referred to. It is so confusing. But let's talk about the Topeka School, because where it places itself in comparison to Atocha Station, being the first book, Topeka School being the second book, considering Adam and his life. This is Adam at the end of high school and just going into university. So that transitional summer period where you finish high school and go into university. So that's the period we're at, so Adam is 18 or thereabouts. And he is the national champion for debating, public speaking, and I'll describe how that works for Adam and how that works in these competitions in just a minute. But Adam is like his poetry in Atocha Station. Adam is amazing at debating and public speaking, whether it be teams debating or individual public speaking of varying formats, and he seems to take part in all of them. He is incredible at all of them, and I think in the previous year, so his year before his senior year of high school, whatever you Americans would call that, he came second in the entire country. So he was expected to be first in the entire country this year. So it's the lead up to this final competition where the expectation on him is very high. And again, he's fearful and nervous, and we find him asking his mother, who is a psychiatrist, to prescribe him some sleeping pills or some tranquilizers for the very first time. So we get this bridging moment where Adam is first introduced to the idea of taking tranquilizers back in the end of high school. So it becomes this amazing bridge in the character that is Adam in Atocha Station, who's addicted to pills and weed and can't stand the sight of himself or anyone else, to this earlier Adam who's just finishing high school and is nervous about something. It's very important and very big, and he implores his mother to give him just 1 or 2 tablets of a tranquilizer just to calm him down. And she relents and gives them to him, and obviously between that and 5 years later when he's in Madrid is this spiralling addiction into pills that we don't see. And maybe Ben Lerner will give us that in another book. I don't know what the future holds for Ben Lerner and his Adam character. But it gives us also a picture into the debating, where debating sits, debating and public speaking in the United States, where this idea of the spread, and this was fascinating. There's lots written about the spread in public speaking and debating in the United States, and the spread is where the rules around scoring of debating is based on not the quality of your argument, but the sheer number of arguments. So what happened to debating in the 80s and 90s was that everyone sped up. People just started talking really fast in order to drop as many points of argument into their speech as they possibly could. And then that would get them more and more and more points. So as opposed to slowing down and talking like a pace I am now and using hand gestures and voice tone to get an argument across, it was all about the speed that you could speak and drop as many argument points in. And I think in some parts of the United States it is still like that. Debating still runs like that. I would urge you to go on YouTube and have a look at some videos about modern debating. Use the term the spread debating tournament, and you'll see how quickly these people talk. It is incredible. So Adam is wrapped up in all of this, but behind all of that, he is a super intelligent guy and knows a lot about almost every subject. And he's very well rehearsed and researched, and he has coaches that help him through all of these different tournaments. And he is an insanely intelligent guy. But in the Topeka School, you can really already see this boy fraying around the edges and the pressure that these tournaments put him under. And it's this great juxtaposition because the school really rewards public speaking and debating students. And they seem to be quite famous for pushing out every few years a new top debater or speaker, as opposed to having the best football team or the best baseball team. This school seems to be a really academic school where they just keep pushing out great scholarly minds and great scholarly minds and argumentative speakers that go on to politics or business or anything in Washington, all that sort of stuff. So this is the world that Adam inhabits. And in the Topeka School it does clear up that picture of Adam. But it only works if you've read Atocha Station, if you've read this earlier picture of Adam. Because if you're just reading the Topeka School in isolation, which I fear a lot of the negative comments about the Topeka School is from people that maybe haven't read Atocha Station, because it's a hard and difficult read. It is all over the place in pieces. And you are never, I think I said before, but you're never quite sure who the narrator of a particular piece is and who they're speaking to or about or who else is in the room, because it's never made very clear. I think it's very dissected and in pieces because this is how Adam is perceiving his life. Like he's trying to focus in on this one thing that's very important to him. But all around him his world is in chaos. So it goes back into the history of his family and talks about his mother and father separating or having affairs, and about how embarrassing it is to have a world-renowned psychiatrist as a mother who's a published author. It goes into all of these insecurities that Adam has and the history behind them all. And it talks about his girlfriend that he's had for a long time, and she goes overseas to Spain. She goes overseas to Spain and then sends him a letter or gives him a call to say, no, it's all off, I've met someone else, I'm not coming back. So we get this idea that he's got Spain now in his head, that Spain is definitely a place that I want to go because I need to chase after this girlfriend. There's so many interesting things here, but they're only interesting if you know the stuff from Atocha Station, because all by itself I think the Topeka School would be a really difficult ask for anyone who's just coming at Ben Lerner for the very first time. But saying that, he writes beautifully. Like, some of the prose is stunningly beautiful, but in total the book is in pieces. It is all over the place. And if you can stomach that and try and put it all together, please give it a shot, because it is rewarding. It's rewarding like Proust is rewarding. If you've ever read Proust, that is some hard work. That's really hard work. It's rewarding like Don Quixote is rewarding. It's rewarding like James Joyce is rewarding. It's rewarding for the effort that you put into it to understand what on God's green earth is going on. It's rewarding for that, because once you get there, once you do understand once you do understand all of the intricacies that Ben Lerner has laid out for us, it is such a rewarding read. And I'm glad that I took my time to do it the way I did, reading Atocha Station first. I did it unconsciously. I didn't set out to do it that way. I just happened to pick up Atocha Station first. But such a rewarding pair of books. And now I can't wait to go back and read 1004. Completely different subject matter, completely different bunch of characters, I think. I haven't even looked at it yet. But it also makes me want to read this, but also some of his poetry and some of his essays about the craft of writing poetry and about the poetry community. So I think I'll do another Ben Lerner video. So let's call this one Ben Lerner 1, number 1. And when I've read a little bit more Ben Lerner from outside of the Adam character, I'll do another one called Ben Lerner 2, and we'll do some comparisons that way. For all those that have tried Ben Lerner and failed, or just didn't like it, That's okay, that's no problem. It is a difficult book, especially the Topeka School. But if you thought you're on the fence, you're not quite sure, maybe you want to give it another go, or if it's still on your TBR, then please give it a shot. But go into it thinking that this is a challenge. This is not going to be a single sitting read. It's not going to be something light and fluffy. It's not even going to be funny or sad or any of those things. It is going to be a challenge, but it's a good one. And what I got out of it is an incredible insight into this character of Adam that I feel better for having read than having left on the shelf. I hope all that makes sense. I've kind of waffled on about 2 books for 20 minutes, but I hope you enjoy either of those books. Get into them. I really enjoyed them. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your day, wherever you may be, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks. Bye.